There's an interesting story about how the Perry County Museum came to be. In 1984, I belonged to an organization. We called ourselves the Humane Society of Perry County. And the city allowed us to store all of the things we kept to have a rummage sale twice a year in a building in the city park. And this building was an old home that had been built by a German immigrant who came to this country in the early 1800s. He was a butcher, and he bought this land and raised his cattle and hogs that he used in his butcher shop, and built this home out of Perry County manufactured brick and wood that he had floated down the Mississippi River from St. Louis. It was all the wood that came. We think it's fir. I'm not sure about that, but that seems to be what the consensus is. And this big old brick house was sitting in what is now the city park because his farm was bought by the city in 1950 and turned into our city park. But the house they saved. And they used it for the Girl Scout meetings, and the city board met here sometimes. And they allowed us to bring our rummage items and keep them here till we had our sale. We came down one day to work on our rummage items, and there was a big yellow ribbon around this house. And we thought, what in the world's going on? So I went down to City Hall, and I talked to the mayor, and I talked to the city administrator, and I said, why is there a yellow ribbon around that house? And he said, well, we think we're going to tear it down. He said, we thought we were going to put the city administrator, let him live there, and we hired an architect from a firm to go down and assess the building, and he said, well, it was all right, it was in good shape, it needed a lot of work, but it was fundamentally sound. But the guy didn't want to live there. He didn't want to live in an old house, so we think we're going to tear it down. And that was the end of my meeting with the city administrator. So I went hustling back to the Perry County Historical Society, and I said, they're going to tear that fine old building down. Wouldn't that be great for a museum? And the group thought it would be a great idea if there was some way we could save it. So I went back to the city administrator with a proposal, and I said, if you would allow us to use that building for a museum, we would maintain the inside of it if you would help us take care of the outside, because I don't think financially we could handle the whole thing. So the city administrator took it to his board of aldermen, and they had a meeting one night. And at that time, on the board of aldermen were 3 older people who had grown up in this community, and there were 3 younger people. And they brought this proposal up, and one of the older fellows said, you can't tear that house down. I played craps there with Charlie Duerr. And the other lady said, oh, that's a fine historical building. You can't tear that down. And the other guy said, I sure don't think we ought to tear that building down. I think we should let them have it for a museum. And that's exactly how it happened. The city let us have it for a museum.